Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Carrot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1987 romantic comedy titled Overboard. Now, Overboard runs for 1 hour and 52 minutes long. It is directed by Garry Marshall. It is produced by Nick Abdo, Roddy McDowall, Alexandra Rose, and Anthea Silbert. The script was written by Leslie Dixon. The score was done by Alan Silvestri. The cinematography by John A. Alonzo, and it was edited by Johnny Baskin and Dove Aining. And the stars of the movie are Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell, Edward Hermann, Katherine Helmond. We also have Roddy McDowall, Michael G. Hagerty, Brian Price, Jared Rushton, Jamie Wild, Jeffrey Wiseman, Hector Elizondo, who over the years has been kind of almost like in almost every film or TV series that Garry Marshall has ever directed. Hector Elizondo had appeared at one point or another. We also have Sven-Ole Thorsen, Garry Marshall himself, and we also have Ray Combs. So released in 1987, Overboard depends very heavily on reliable performers to carry the film, and the casting choices couldn't have come at a better price, with Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell taking the leads in a movie that potential of being quite a forgettable relic. But if it wasn't for the dynamic performance of real-life partners, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, this movie could have been, pushed into complete obscurity. Fortunately, they made it all the more memorable. Just the fact of the matter is they know each other, they know each other's strengths, they know each other's weaknesses. And in the end, it actually all works out very well. I guess sometimes to really understand a performer, you got to sort of know who they are. And I guess you could say the trust level really actually does pay off. The duo manages to take what appears to be a banal script and make it feel at least watchable by making us care for the characters and playing like it meant something genuine. The script had potential to shine, but sadly it tanked when it really should have been a lot more memorable, but inevitably it eventually was one of those romantic comedies where the script just kind of got lost in the crowd somewhere. So trapped in the small working class town of Elk Cove, Oregon, Joanna Slayton, played by Goldie Hawn, is hanging around while in her all exquisite yacht, which was in need of some repairs. Well, actually, it was for her own purpose. I mean, she just wanted to build some extensions for her ever so growing wardrobe. You see, Goldie Hawn's character is this rich socialite. She's also people who are below her standards down, and she does it without apology, and she also does it without prejudice. She doesn't care who you are. If you're below her standards, her social standards, she will curse upon you. And she will do it in a vicious unremorseful way. So she hires a studly handyman named Dean Prophet, played by Kurt Russell, complete with 80s mullet and charming good looks and all. Well, he makes a new cabinet. Once again, it was for her ever so growing shoe collection. Due to her status as an upper-class rich lady, she takes the pleasure to chastise, judge, and douse her snobby ways to everyone she sees below her status. Dean is definitely none too pleased with her misbehavior and her bullying ways, which manifests towards him. She wanted her wardrobe to be organized in a certain way, but unfortunately, she was not satisfied with his efforts. He wanted her to pay her nonetheless, something like $600, like she promised. I mean, come on now, $600, that's like fucking pocket change to her. And she couldn't even at least give him a little leeway. Oh, but she did give him a tip. Actually, it wasn't even a tip. It was more like a push. That's right, she pushed him off the yacht. Fortunately, at least he managed to make it to safety unscathed. But when she got pushed off the yacht, I believe it was either through her husband or maybe it was a storm. I don't know. She got pushed off the yacht. She didn't come out as lucky as Dean. Oh, she's still alive, but she was left unconscious at a hospital, and it also turns out that she ended up having amnesia. So she ends up in the hospital without a clue as to who she is, and this opens up the opportunity for Dean to get revenge on this pampered snob. So this act of revenge is that he lies to the hospital staff and tells them that she's his wife and that she is the mother of his 4 hyperactive sons. Joanna has now entered into a world she has never been to before, and she now lives in squalor, and she definitely has to take responsibility while Dean keeps the scheme intact while he ventures to seek employment. Now, I think that when I say that that Dean lives in squalor, well, that is a bit of an understatement. And it leads me up to asking me this question: where are child services when you need them? I will tell you why. First of all, I don't have a problem with poor. I'm not rich, and I'm not going to deny anything. I don't wear trendy clothes. But there is one thing that I don't live in, and that is squalor. I run a very neat establishment. We do laundry every day. We clean, we sweep, we do the dishes. We fix things here and there. We do everything we can to keep our place immaculate. If we can't be rich, at least be clean. These kids are practically most of the time seen looking dirty and unkept. The house is condemned. The roofs are leaking. The roofs are leaking. The floors are creaking. There's dust. There's debris. There's dirty dishes. There's dirty laundry. It's a fucking pigsty where they live in. And the kids seem to be somewhat unkept. And the worst part about it is that Dean doesn't give a damn in the least. And now all of a sudden, it's like her amnesia has become his advantage. Okay, maybe he's not asking for her money. He's not asking for her fortune, even though she could be the female variant of Richie Rich. No, all he wants is for her to step into his world, where there are no maids and butlers serving you your food and coiffing your fingernails, or doing everything at your beck and call. And that you will and you are going to get your hands dirty. And you're not living in this big fancy mansion on the Hollywood Hills. No, you're in a small working class town of Elk Cove, Oregon. So in some ways, we're not kind of like looking at the more or less of two evils. I mean, on the one hand, you take pity for Dean Prophet because he was treated so shabby, and that you do kind of feel bad for him. But also, at the same time, you can't really take too much sympathy because he is being an opportunist. And while you can't take too much pity and sympathy for Joanna Slayton because she's a rich, pampered, spoiled little bitch. Yes, hi, Mom. But at the same time, you kind of feel bad for her because she's being taken hostage and she doesn't even know about it. And I think one of the big weaknesses here, which pertains to the script, is that this whole vengeance scheme just goes on a little bit way too long. I think that a movie that is about an hour and 52 minutes could have been cut to maybe an hour and 32 minutes. Because basically the rest of the movie is just Joanna basically cleaning up this pigsty, basically practically on her own, while her contract, self-employed handyman is trying to seek employment. And yes, I know it's not a very easy thing, and maybe he might be a caring and loving father, but he's also being an opportunist. You don't take opportunity to another person and expect her to do everything while he and his hyperactive sons don't do shit all. So in the end, there really is no clean-cut, likable character, and at the same time, there's no clean-cut, unlikable character. They're both very, very shady people, and they're not the only ones, too. No. I mean, Joanna Slayton is actually married to someone. And at first, you probably would think that maybe he would vouch for her and say that this guy, this Dean Prophet, is lying to her by saying that she's her husband. No, he's actually going for it. He's saying, yeah, these two are a married couple. And he just walks out of the hospital. So now she's automatically an instant wife towards Dean, and now is an instant mother to these 4 rambunctious kids. While Edward Herman, he is now going to live off the bachelor life and screw around with Playboy playmates, which is what he wanted to do. Which is what he wanted to do. So there goes a full-blown unlikable character. And then you also have Katherine Helmond, who plays her mother. And it's her mother who kind of taught her how to be like this. She taught her to always put down those below her social standings. While she should be treated like a queen, anybody who is below her financial status quo will be treated like garbage. So in this movie, it might seem light in its delivery. There are actually quite a lot of very, very unlikable characters in this movie. So although light in its delivery under the direction of Garry Marshall, the film itself lacks in the comedy it's promised, and it's thanks mostly to a very lopsided script under the penmanship of Leslie Dixon. Overboard has the tools for a potential battle of the classes, the upper class versus the working class. I mean, we are trying to determine to see which class is the good guy or the bad guy. Of course, a lot of movies, you know, they always seem to label the upper class in a stereotypical way as being the bad guys, the elitists, the snobs, the opportunists. But here it also shows that the lower class system does not wear a white knight suit. And of course, they also have the amnesia angle thrown in to try to make things a little more intriguing. But the amnesia story eventually ends up being demoted to just an afterthought, and really nothing comes in the way except for Joanna adapting a lifestyle that's completely alien to her. All her life she's lived in this kind of rich upper class elitist bubble, but now she's trying to learn firsthand what it's like to be poor. But I think that this whole poverty setting that is in store for her is just way too over the top. There's nothing wrong with poor. I don't have anything against poor. But it's just way too overkill. And maybe that should have been the more proper name for this movie. Overkill. So she's trapped in this lie, and she just... No, there's definitely no conflicts or repercussions about her memory loss. In fact, basically this whole story just, you know, basically in a bit of a directionless way, just lets her go with the flow. Lets her experience what it's like to live in poverty and to actually watch over 4 kids who definitely are in desperate need for child services. I mean, okay, maybe Dean doesn't abuse them or neglects them, but he's very, very nonchalant in his ways of nurturing, which is also not healthy either. You know, as a father, you're supposed to play a parental inspiration towards your offspring, not a glorified older brother. You have a responsibility. You have to take the initiation in raising a child. Okay, I can take sympathy to the fact that your wife died. I'm sorry for you. But you also have brought these kids into this world, and now you have to take care of them. not just let them run around wild and crazy and looking like slobs. The movie's focal settings has Joanna going from a socialite to a domestic mother to 4 incorrigible brats. The house is condemned and Shirley has seen better days, and the worst part is Dean just is okay with it. Like, he doesn't give a shit. But Dean does not seem to dismiss. Joanna is now faced with an environment she has never been through before. She is trapped in this lie that she just can't escape from, as concocted evidence comes in the form of photos or stuff. So this whole vengeance scheme goes into well planned. I mean, he even shows rigged photos of her and him as legal guardians to these kids. And with Dean, while stressing the fact that she has been in a sexual relationship with a man she would never consider getting in bed with. I mean, this whole vengeance scheme seems to be well planned from the beginning. And even her legal husband is like saying, "She's yours, buddy. I'm going to enjoy the single life and fuck around with Playboy sluts. I'm going to live the life. I'm going to take your yacht. I'm going to take your fortune. You're going to have to deal with living with this guy in his lovely, dilapidated, condemned home that is in desperate need of repairs." Maybe the only other improvement could be a wrecking ball, but the place has practically been destroyed in a metaphoric wrecking ball. I mean, the place surely should not be a place to raise a family or kids. You could be working class, but at least find a better living headquarters. The film definitely emphatically garners to the mortified facial reactions of Joanna, sort of to play along the schemes of Dean, but Marshall only just goes to the shallow waters of this experimental house arrest, while turning a small town in Oregon into making it feel like you're living in Kentucky. And it seems that the characters who are in this movie kind of act like the stereotypical rednecks, from consuming beer to barrel dunking games. Sure, this film had potential to go to many places, but Marshall decided to stagnate with what it is. Now, this might be just some minor squabbling, contrary differences to the cliched slow love dance, and from the shock value changes to a growing romance. The relationship definitely does get better as Joanna has now made a house even the boys have grown fond of, and getting some well-needed discipline that's been a long time coming for them. So in the end, maybe Dean needed Joanna all this time just as much as Joanna needed them. Maybe these kids needed her as another parent, because, let's face it, raising 4 kids on your own can be very tricky. Sometimes he needs the help of 2 parental figures to run the house. And sure, Dean could do also his part of work outside the house and in the house, Joanna can also benefit from work outside the house and in the house. And in the end, the kids will probably end up at least being a little less rambunctious to being a little more upstart. And maybe and like I said, it's probably one of those stories like they need them as much as them needs they, if that makes any sense. But that's kind of like what I'm trying to get at. Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell seem to have a great chemistry for each other. But I guess this sort of makes sense because they have been partners for many, many years. They've also know what it's like to raise kids. One of them, of course, actually went on to a very successful movie career herself. I'm talking Kate Hudson. Kate Hudson is, of course, the biological daughter of Goldie Hawn, and Kurt Russell practically raised her as a father, which was more that could be said for her famous father, Bill Hudson, who, if you remember, back in the 70s, he was a member of a 70s, I think it was a progressive rock group trio called the Hudson Brothers. Yep, that Bill Hudson. So with Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell playing the leading roles, they know each other very well. They just seem naturally comfortable in each other's presence, and they seem to actually have probably a great chemistry towards each other. And even though their characters are, among others, very cliched, they could still convey expressions like we would expect them to be, knowing the situations they're facing. Russell embodies the right levels of anxiety and drive as he nervously tries anything in his power to make Joanna or / Annie his wife by making it convincing. He turns definitely the best performer here as he uses his machismo and his charismatic good looks, complete with the typical 80s mullet ways, to keep Joanna in on the soft revenge while also keeping her on her toes, doing domestic housework and raising 4 boys who she doesn't really know, but she thinks she knows because, as Ross says, she has amnesia. Her opening scenes as a spoiled snob hit the right chord as the perfect foil for the world she's oblivious and the struggles of adjustment. And though Overboard back in 1987 tanked at the box office, in later years it really got a fan following once it was frequently seen on cable television. And this is largely due to the meager charm it brings, while the vague acts of restoration plays better as a TV movie rather than the big screen. Marshall made television programs with the kind of material that was given to him. It truly had a sitcom atmosphere, with enough hooks and angles to keep the air running from there. Putting it on the screen was not the right move here, and only Hawn and Russell ensure that they'll pull the right chords to keep the film eligible to make it at least feel cinematic. So basically, the main cargo, the one who's doing pretty much most of the heavy work, was the performances of both Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. This is not really to put down Garry Marshall in any way, sense or form, shape or form, but it really had more of a sitcom feel than it did as a theatrical feel. But it's still recommended, even though, yes, I did give quite a few flaws. But I try not to overdo with the flaws because it was still enjoyable to watch. The acting was pretty good, especially mostly from Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. The supporting players also did quite well. I know 2 of the 4 sons who went on to other roles. Of course, I'm talking about Jared Rushton. Jared Rushton would later, 2 years later, play a much more bigger role in the character of Ronnie Thompson from the 1989 Disney classic Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And Jeffrey Wiseman, he played a small part in the movie Home Alone. You remember the kid who lived across the street from the McAllisters? His name was Mitch Murphy, who was the nosy neighbor from across the street. Remember the scene where Heather McAllister was giving a head count? And, because Mitch Murphy is roughly the same age as Kevin McAllister, she accidentally counted Mitch's head instead of Kevin's head. Of course, the Murphys were also robbed by the Wet Bandits, and of course also had their basement flooded because the Wet Bandits' calling card is rob the house and leave the waters running. So yes, so they actually did go on to bigger roles after this. I don't know the rest of the other 2, but yeah. So anyways, I guess when all was said and done, if I was to give a scale out of 10, I would definitely give Overboard a 7 out of 10. I recommend this movie, even though there could have been a lot of improvements in this movie, but at least I'll say it's 10 times better than the 2018 remake gender reversing movie, also known as Overboard. It's still 10 times better than that one. Didn't really like the remake and the whole gender reversing thing. I just thought it was just a lazy attempt to try to take an old movie and to make a new twist to it. I don't recommend that. Just stick to the 1987 one better and you'll do fine. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my YouTube channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember the 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and please refrain from any rude comments. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Rudd Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.